There is another mild formatting error on the back cover of Fazbear Frights number 8. It lists the third story, What We Found, as second, and the second story, Sergio's Lucky Day, as third. Scott Cawthon now owes me $37,000 in damages. You'd better find that checkbook, Scott, because if things keep going like this, you're gonna need it. The only thing that disgusts Angel more than her stepsister Ophelia's lavish birthday party is the final surprise at the end, a life-sized human figure made entirely out of gummy candy. Jealous and bitter, Angel steals the gumdrop nose meant for the birthday girl and eats it, despite warnings to the contrary. But later that night, a hideous transformation takes place, one that happens too quickly and too viciously for Angel to regret. I think of all the Fazbear Frights I've read, this is the first one where I knew like 100% where it was going. The twist was predictable, the story beats were predictable, even the body horror was predictable. I'm not sure if it's because I've read so many of these things already or if it's just because this is such a common story trope, but I was just unable to immerse myself in Gumdrop Angel. Kind of a shame, really. What stands out in this story? Angel's yet another douchebag protagonist, but this time it's more justified as the rest of her family are giant douchebags. Her stepfather, Myron, makes Stephen King antagonists look multidimensional. Still, it's very difficult to write an unlikable protagonist that the reader wants to follow. I think the only time they've ever succeeded is Lonely Freddy, which is why I gave that story such praise. I guess it's just best to accept these poorly written, unlikable protagonists as per the usual course for Fazbear Frights. There's also this one scene that goes absolutely nowhere. The book dedicates several pages to this detour at a horse farm where the parents are picking out a yearling for the spoiled and overindulged Ophelia. Now, the point of this scene is to establish how much money the parents are spending on Ophelia and how little they're spending on Angel, who's trying to get into a prestigious art school, which eventually leads her to snap and eat the coveted gumdrop nose. But it's the fact that this whole sequence just plays out in its entirety with Angel having this full conversation with a side character named Tammy who has absolutely zero impact on the plot. That irritated me. Any self-respecting editor would say, scrap that scene, but I don't know, maybe they had to hit a word minimum or something like that. Maybe they were paid by the word, like those old authors. Yeah, you ever wonder why, like, all those old-timey books you had to read in school, ever wonder why, like, a character will ask someone, hey, like, you know, how's the weather today? And the other character says, oh, the weather was like the man I dated yesterday. It was, passable, dark, kind of cloudy, but still had a very, melancholy inclination, and I found it rather platitudinous and boring. Yeah, that's because they were paid by the word. It's not because they're being profound, they're just being paid by the word. That's why all those books were so annoyingly long-winded, just like how I'm being annoyingly long-winded now. Also, the curse of the gumdrop nose is a little nonsensical when you put more than 3 brain cells to it. If it only affects people who eat it, who aren't the birthday kid, then how many times has this happened where it becomes like a regular enough occurrence to have the birthday gummy at kids' parties? How many dysfunctional families are out there with vengeful siblings who eat the gumdrop nose for themselves and take on the curse of the birthday gummy, all within like a certain radius of this one specific Freddy Fazbear's Pizza? The story doesn't make clear whether or not this is a regular occurrence, but the logical lapses still stand. Then again, this is Fazbear Frights we're talking about. Overall, Gumdrop Angel wasn't good. Very predictable story, and the parts that stood out did not hold up. Definitely bottom of the barrel. Next. Sergio, a project manager at an architectural firm, is overwhelmed with his work and a string of bad luck. But all that changes when he finds a toy figurine that calls itself Lucky Boy. With Lucky Boy's advice, Sergio's life seems to take a turn for the better. But what he doesn't realize is that all that good luck is just pavement for the path to his own destruction. When you encounter a story about luck and wishes coming true, the first thing that comes to mind is The Monkey's Paw, the classic tale about the protagonist who wishes for anything he wants but must pay the price for his desires in the end. This one kinda does that. The toy, based off Balloon Boy, gives vague affirmations when prompted, and Sergio acts on them on his own accord. This leads to him attaining a winning lottery ticket, which he uses to buy a new car and a new watch. But then the car gets stolen, the truck he buys to replace the car gets wrecked, and his girlfriend now hates him because he didn't buy her anything. Bitch. So I guess it's kinda more like a morality tale about how suddenly assumed wealth can turn you into a jerk, and about how the foundations of materialism are made of matchsticks. Let's make that another quote. So anyway, Sergio turns into a jerk and yells at his sweet old lady neighbor who bakes cookies. That part legitimately broke my heart. And he loses everyone and everything in his life. Not as tragic as the original Monkey's Paw, but more or less in line with it. It's the ending that's wonderfully gnarly, though. Sergio is going to a high school reunion to try and rekindle a relationship with an old flame, and Lucky Boy tells him that his physical features could use some improvement. So he takes a knife, he carves up his own face, and he goes to the reunion that way. He's there, everyone's appalled by him, he's dripping blood and mucus and hair onto the floor. And he blames the venue for having a dirty carpet. And the final line is him gleefully asking where his girlfriend is. Bruh. So yeah, that ending was hilarious, and it pretty much makes up for the milquetoast story before it. This one was alright, nothing to write home about, with the exception of the ending, of course. Next. Hudson is a security guard working at... hear me out, okay? He's working as a security guard at a horror attraction called Fazbear's Frights, where he... Okay, just stop, let me finish. A horror attraction called Fazbear's Frights, and on night 2, they find an old rabbit animatronic... Okay, stop. You know what? Okay, it's FNAF 3 with more domestic abuse. Better? Seriously, this one is pretty much just a straight written adaptation of FNAF 3, but again, with more domestic abuse. The standout, though, is the protagonist, Hudson. I really liked his backstory, and he has this voodoo grandma who... she's awesome. She was my favorite character. He also has a tragic past where he set his house on fire in an act of vengeance against his abusive stepfather and neglectful mother, killing them in the process. Ooh, pretty heavy for Fazbear Frights. The depictions of domestic abuse in Hudson's flashbacks were surprisingly vivid, and they really caught me off guard. The overall atmosphere of the Fazbear's Frights horror attraction really captures the spirit of FNAF 3. You've got like the spooky Halloween like ambiance and the burnt, decrepit scenery. I really liked that. That's where the good parts of this story end, however. Basically at night, Hudson's past comes back to haunt him, manifesting in the form of a Springtrap, the other animatronics, and ghosts, I guess, and they speak to him in the voice of his past abusers. I get they're trying to go for a messed up haunted house sequence kind of thing, but it just batters you over and over again with scares and psychological horror imagery that it just becomes exhausting. It reminded me of the climax to the Twisted ones. They throw everything plus the kitchen sink at you, expecting you to be scared, but you're already numb before you can process any of it. And Hudson ends up crawling into an oven and burning himself alive. Irony, I guess. What we found, it was subpar. The backstory and the atmosphere were the highlights, but the scares and the actual story progression ranged from alright to annoying. Man, this is the first time since Into the Pit where I was overall unimpressed with all 3 stories. I really hope this doesn't become the norm going forward. And speaking of unimpressed, the Stitch Wraith Saga, or the Eleanor Epic. Actually, things slow down this time. We get to see more from Larson and Jake's perspectives. Larson's recovering from his injuries and reuniting with his son, and Jake, as the Stitch Wraith, is now this like shadowy castaway trying to grapple with this absurd new condition he's found himself in. The time-traveling ball pit also makes a cameo. Remember that? Larson visits the restaurant where the ball pit's at, and he takes a dried blood sample. I guess we'll see where that goes. I did appreciate the more restrained, believable pace, but I doubt things are going to stay that way. Also, this use of an exclamation point outside dialogue really irritated me. Writing pro tip, folks, avoid using exclamation points outside of dialogue. It comes off as a tacky and try hard. There are very few instances where it can work. This was no exception. And that's about it for today. See you all next time.